Since Apple started the transition to Apple Silicon, we've gotten some pretty decent price cuts in old Mac hardware, something that wasn't common before. But still, should you consider buying an old Mac, especially when Apple Silicon has so much to offer at this point? Intel Macs were hot, slow, and battery intensive, but nowadays all those things for cheap. For $500, about the price you would pay for a very good Chromebook is an insane value. I want to spoil the conclusion now and say that this is not the laptop for a power user. If you have any intention of doing pro or creative work, I would recommend the price equivalent Windows laptop. For $500, even in the used Mac market, you can get a significantly better Windows laptop and have no Mac limitations. Now with that being said, this is likely the best built laptop you'll get for $500. Apple makes the sleekest laptops, and this laptop comes from a time when Apple was 100% design, going as far as removing essentially every port at a time when the universal standard was still USB. Now sure, the regression from these almost portless Macs is soon, with them really only adding a SD card and a MagSafe port, but what can you say? Apple Silicon has brought more to the table than just a new design and some ports. The performance of Apple Silicon chips is mind-blowing. With every generation, Apple seems to refine their process, getting to the point where even the most basic Apple chips have begun to rival new chips from Intel and even outperforming some 13th generation Intel processors.
That's just damn right disgusting. But I like it!
This video isn't about Apple Silicon, so I'll spare the pole jock, but Apple moving from Intel chips, while being a breath of fresh air, do Intel MacBooks still have a market in this increasingly bespoke world? Even if niche, will these Macs perform well enough to stay or even consider buying? The MacBook I'm testing is an i5 2020 MacBook Air. This is a slightly upgraded version of the MacBook Air, which if you were in the market around the time, you'll remember basically everyone saying the i3 was a joke. Now if you did or do have the i3 at the time, the performance is decent. However, if you're looking to buy one now, you might want to look for the i5 spec. The i3 nowadays, I'm sure doesn't hold up as well, and definitely not well enough to justify the price. As I've said, this Mac is not the best value, and the i3 is probably the best demonstration of that. While I don't have it to test, I can say it is likely far from a $500 experience. Sadly, the disparity between the two Macs likely isn't large because the design is the same, but the extra leeway the i5 gives you helps with everything. This Mac performs about how you would expect. Apple hasn't decided to throw out support for these machines just yet, but as they grow Apple Silicon users, the end days will loom. No one should be running out buying one of these as their main machine unless they have a very good reason. It's difficult to find one now with Windows being on Apple Silicon through various methods. Not many people need exclusively Intel chips, and if they do, likely it's a PC they're actually looking for. These machines for right now are okay, but not a stellar deal. If you manage to find one in the sub $500 range, it's likely worth it considering your use case and how long you plan on using it. If you need a new laptop for the rest of the year or until more price cuts come to used Apple Silicon hardware, sure, getting into the ecosystem early may be worth it, but considering you'll likely have the nicest paperweight in a few years, holding off on Intel chips may be worth it. Super heavy workflows on this machine are not possible, and really the most thing you can do is Photoshop and web browsing, but sadly you have to stick to one or the other. For multitasking, this is kind of out the window, and pretty much anything else feels somewhat sluggish. From just general stuff like settings to opening apps, definitely not the machine you want to be demoing clients on, but still you could get some work done. My personal best use case has been scripts, photos, and basically the only two creative things I can do on this machine, and while it's not hampering bad, there were slowdowns, and these slowdowns might not have been a distraction, but they were definitely limiting. In that I didn't feel like I could do everything that I needed to do. I think if you wanted to use a Mac like this as your daily, you may want to wait until Apple Silicon is cheaper, unless you can get a crazy deal on the i7. At this point, Intel MacBook Airs feel less like a passable laptop and more like a usable Chromebook, which is telling for where these machines are headed, as many people who are looking for MacBooks will need the performance. Using the Mac never felt bad at any point, I want to make this clear. It's still a very usable machine if you're in the market for a laptop. Like I said, you can get some work done, but the type of work you're going to be getting done likely won't be able to keep up with your demands. These machines are fairly loud and power inefficient. This laptop basically lives on the charger. While you can get some pretty good battery life, all-day battery life wasn't possible with Intel chips. Still not useless, and if you can taper your expectations, then you may be surprised. You can't multitask well, and if you keep that in mind, then using this laptop is fine. I would only use this laptop if you needed a note-taking and a web viewing machine. You can edit photos and even do some light video editing, 1080p 16, but for $500 used and being extremely small, well built, the value aspect is there. While not being something you should focus on, this MacBook Air isn't a complete brick just yet. You could still use this machine for likely a while longer without slowdowns, but it should also be considered these Intel Macs may lose OS support, and generally apps have been updated for only the Apple Silicon versions first. The older Intel Macs have showed their age much more than just this one, and while this one is literally the most recent Intel Mac, you still should remember support for these machines is limited. If you happen to break your screen or mess up your keyboard, good luck getting a replacement or reasonable help from Apple, and secondhand shops will likely charge you as much as the Mac itself. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, you can leave a like and tell me why you liked it, and if you didn't like it, then leave a dislike and tell me why you didn't like it. And if you want to see more, then you can subscribe and go watch more on my channel, and if you don't want to watch more, just get on out of here. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.